Dawn breaks over forward operating base Vanguard like a reluctant promise, painting the desert sky in shades of amber and gold. The air still holds the night's chill, but everyone knows it won't last. In less than 2 hours, the temperature will climb past 100 degrees, and the metal surfaces of the aircraft hangar will become too hot to touch with bare skin. Technical. Specialist Rachel Thorne moves through the massive hangar with practiced precision, her boots making soft sounds against the concrete floor. She's always the first one in, always claiming these quiet moments before the chaos begins. The enormous Apache helicopter looms before her like a sleeping predator, its 30mm chain gun waiting for her meticulous attention. Rachel pulls her toolbox closer and begins the familiar ritual of disassembling the weapon system. Her movements are economical, nothing wasted. Each piece removed with the confidence of someone who has performed this task hundreds of times. Her hands work almost independently of thought, allowing her eyes to occasionally scan the hangar entrance. Always watching, always alert. Despite her deliberately unremarkable appearance, the sound of distant voices signals the end of her solitude. Young mechanics filter into the hangar, their laughter echoing off the high ceiling as they joke about something that happened in the barracks the night before. One of them, a cocky airman named Danny, notices Rachel and nudges his friend with an exaggerated grin. "Morning, General Dustmop," he says with a mock salute that wouldn't pass inspection in any real military ceremony. The others laugh, their voices carrying the casual cruelty of youth unchecked by wisdom or experience. Rachel doesn't react, continuing her work as if she hadn't heard. When she reaches for a specialized calibration tool, the sleeve of her uniform pulls back slightly, revealing a small scar on her wrist, the kind that doesn't come from mechanical work. The kind that tells stories she's never shared with anyone on this base. She's been at Vanguard for almost 7 months now. Before that, it was forward operating base Condor for 5 months, and Joint Base Reynolds before that. Always in supporting roles, always in the background. The perfect place to be invisible when you need to watch without being watched. A group of pilots walks through the hangar on their way to the morning briefing room. Captain Marcus Webb leads them, his flight suit crisp and his confidence evident in every stride. Not one of them acknowledges Rachel's presence as they pass within feet of her workspace. She's part of the landscape now, like the tool cabinets, or the safety warning signs posted above the fueling station. Just another component in the vast machine of war. The Apache's chain gun comes apart in her hands piece by piece, each component inspected with an attention to detail that borders on obsessive. Rachel has never made a mistake in her maintenance work, not once. But perfection has become her camouflage, excellence her hiding place. When you're flawless at being unremarkable, people stop seeing you entirely. In the mess hall during lunch, she sits alone at a small table near the back wall. Sergeant Williams approaches with his tray, then notices her and immediately moves to another spot without a word. The rejection is so casual, so automatic that Rachel doubts he even realizes he's done it. She eats mechanically, her eyes constantly moving, cataloging faces, noting conversations, taking in everything while appearing to focus on nothing more important than her standard issue meal. Later, in the supply depot, she's halfway through explaining a requisition form to the clerk when Lieutenant Peterson walks up and interrupts her mid-sentence. The clerk immediately turns his full attention to the officer, leaving Rachel standing there with her form in hand, invisible once again. She waits patiently, used to being treated like furniture that occasionally speaks. Back in the hangar by early afternoon, the heat is becoming oppressive, despite the massive fans running at full capacity. Captain Andrew Calloway, the hangar commander, approaches with his ever-present clipboard and the sharp-edged expression of someone perpetually trying to prove he deserves his rank. "Thorne," he says without looking up from his paperwork. His tone is dismissive, the way someone might address a piece of malfunctioning equipment. "I need this Apache ready by 1400 hours. Colonel's direct orders." He finally glances at her, his eyes holding the kind of casual disdain that cuts deeper than outright hostility. "And try not to screw it up this time." The accusation hangs in the air like smoke from burning fuel. Rachel has never once made an error in her work, not a single mistake in 7 months of meticulous service. But Calloway walks away without waiting for acknowledgement, already focused on his next task, leaving her alone with the unfair criticism echoing in the hangar's vast space. She returns to her work, rolling up her sleeves as the desert heat penetrates. Even the hangar shade on her upper arm, partially hidden by the uniform fabric, is a faded patch. Black and gold, its design intricate but worn by time and circumstance. She normally keeps it covered completely, but the oppressive temperature makes that increasingly difficult. The hangar fills with activity as the morning progresses. Pilots prepare for missions, mechanics work on various aircraft, and the noise level rises with the temperature. Voices and tools create a symphony of military efficiency, and through it all, Rachel remains focused on the Apache's weapon system. Invisible among the organized chaos. As she works, she thinks about the 7 months of careful observation that brought her to this moment. 7 months of being overlooked, dismissed, and treated like background noise. 7 months of watching, waiting, and gathering the evidence that will soon turn this entire base upside down. But for now, she's just the quiet woman cleaning the machine gun, ignored by everyone around her. The perfect disguise for someone who needs to remain unseen while she prepares to reveal the truth that's been hiding in plain sight. The day continues its relentless march toward afternoon, and Rachel continues her careful work, knowing that everything is about to change. Soon, the invisibility that has protected her will be stripped away, and the woman everyone has ignored will finally be seen for who she truly is. The question isn't whether they'll be ready for that revelation. The question is whether she's ready to stop hiding and start fighting back. Major Travis Blackwood rushes into the hangar with the purposeful stride of someone running late for an important briefing. His flight suit bears the patches that tell the story of a distinguished career: combat missions, special qualifications, unit insignias that command respect from anyone who knows how to read them. Authority radiates from him naturally, unlike Captain Calloway's forced attempts at command presence. As Blackwood hurries past Rachel's workstation, something catches his peripheral vision. He stops abruptly, nearly dropping his helmet, and turns slowly toward her. His eyes fix on a point on her arm, where her sleeve has ridden up slightly in the heat. The patch is barely visible, just a corner of black and gold fabric, but it might as well be a neon sign for someone who knows what to look for. Blackwood stares at it with the expression of a man who's seen a ghost in broad daylight. "Is that ... He begins, his voice barely audible above the hangar noise. He steps closer, squinting at the partially concealed insignia. "Is that patch real?" Rachel doesn't look up from her work, continuing to reassemble a component of the firing mechanism with steady hands. After a moment that stretches uncomfortably long, she gives a single, almost imperceptible nod. Blackwood sets his helmet down slowly, approaching her workstation with newfound caution. His earlier rush is completely forgotten. "Eagle Talent Division," he whispers, the words carrying the weight of classified knowledge. "You were Talon?" Rachel remains silent, her hands never pausing in their precise movements. But something in her posture shifts, a subtle straightening that suggests the mask of ordinariness is beginning to slip. "That's not possible," Blackwood continues, mostly to himself now. All Talon operatives were reported killed in action after the Samran incident. For the first time since he approached, Rachel pauses her work. She looks up at him with eyes that suddenly seem far older than her appearance would suggest. There's a weight to her gaze that no regular technician should possess, a depth that speaks of experiences that exist only in classified files and redacted reports. The look silences Blackwood immediately. He straightens involuntarily, his body, recognizing authority even when his mind struggles to process what he's seeing. "I'll be discreet," he says quietly, then retrieves his helmet and leaves with one final backward glance. Throughout the rest of the day, the atmosphere in the hangar shifts in ways that most people can't quite identify but definitely feel. Blackwood speaks urgently to other senior officers in corners, his voice low and his gestures animated. Small groups form and dissolve, stealing glances at Rachel while trying to appear casual about their sudden interest in Apache maintenance. Procedures. Some of the older veterans immediately understand the significance when the patch is pointed out to them. Their faces go pale, and they begin watching Rachel with the kind of respect usually reserved for visiting generals. Others remain confused but sense the change in the air like animals before a storm. Captain Calloway notices the strange behavior from across the hangar, watching with growing confusion as officers he outranks suddenly seem far more interested in his maintenance section than they've ever been before. When a full colonel he's never seen before walks through the main doors, accompanied by two stern-looking men in unmarked uniforms, Calloway's confidence finally begins to waver. "What's going on?" he asked Lieutenant Morrison, who just shakes his head in disbelief. "That woman," Morrison whispers, nodding toward Rachel. "The one cleaning the Apache? She's wearing a Talon patch." "A what?" Calloway's voice betrays his confusion. "Eagle Talon Division. Most classified special operations unit in military history. They were ghosts, Captain. Went places even Delta Force wouldn't touch." Calloway scoffs, but the sound lacks conviction. "That's ridiculous. She's just a tech. I've been ordering her around for months." "That's what makes it so strange," Morrison replies. "If it's real, if that patch is genuine, then she's not just some tech. She's a ghost who chose to come back to life." As the afternoon progresses, more senior personnel arrive. The hangar develops an unusual quiet despite the ongoing work. Normal operations continue, but conversations are hushed, and every eye eventually finds its way to Rachel, who continues working as if nothing has changed. A group of young airmen who normally joke loudly near the tool storage area stand in uncharacteristic silence. When Rachel walks past them to retrieve a calibration device, they straighten their posture without seeming to realize they're doing it. Some unconscious part of their military training recognizes something their conscious minds haven't quite grasped yet. By late afternoon, the hangar is filled with intention that's almost visible. Rachel continues her meticulous work, but those watching closely might notice that her movements have changed subtly. She's more alert now, more ready. The pretense of being ordinary has begun to crack, revealing glimpses of something far more dangerous underneath. As she packs her tools for the day, she glances toward the hangar entrance where two military police officers have taken up positions. They weren't there this morning, and their presence isn't coincidental. She looks down at the patch on her arm, then pulls her sleeve down to cover it completely. The quiet days are ending. The whispers will become questions. The questions will become orders. And what she's been preparing for during these long months of invisibility will finally begin. But as she walks past the assembled officers and curious personnel, one thing becomes clear to everyone watching. The woman they've been ignoring isn't who they thought she was. And tomorrow, when the truth finally comes out, nothing at Forward Operating Base Vanguard will ever be the same. The ghost is stirring. And soon everyone will understand what that means. Base Commander Colonel Richard Mercer arrives at the hangar with his aide, ostensibly for a routine inspection, but his weathered face betrays the real purpose of his visit. His eyes immediately find Rachel working on the Apache, and he studies the now-covered patch on her arm with the intensity of someone trying to solve a puzzle that could change everything. Colonel Mercer isn't a man who visits hangars without serious reason. His presence alone causes personnel to stand straighter and voices to lower throughout the massive space. He whispers something to his aide, who nods once and hurries away with obvious urgency. Rachel continues working, but her body language has shifted noticeably. Her movements remain precise, but there's a new tension in her shoulders, a readiness that wasn't there before. She's aware of being watched, aware of the storm that's building around her carefully constructed identity. 3 military intelligence officers enter the hangar minutes later, speaking briefly with Colonel Mercer before positioning themselves near the exits. They wear standard uniforms, but carry themselves differently. Hunters among soldiers, predators who've caught an interesting scent. The regular personnel sense the growing tension and give the Apache a wide berth. Major Blackwood approaches Colonel Mercer, standing at attention briefly before speaking in hushed tones. "Sir, is it really her?" Blackwood asks, glancing toward Rachel. "We're confirming now," Mercer responds quietly. "Pentagon's pulling the classified files as we speak. If it's genuine, this changes everything about our current operations. If she's who that patch suggests," Blackwood says carefully, "she should be running this base, not maintaining our aircraft." Mercer's expression remains neutral, but his eyes never leave Rachel. "If she's who that patch suggests, Major, there's a very good reason she's not." Rachel finishes reassembling the Apache's weapon system, her movements as precise and confident as ever, even under the weight of dozens of watching eyes. She wipes her hands methodically on a maintenance rag, then turns to face the growing crowd of observers. For the first time since arriving at Vanguard, she stands at her full height, no longer adopting the slightly hunched posture of someone trying to avoid notice. The transformation is subtle, but unmistakable. The invisible woman is beginning to emerge from her carefully constructed camouflage. Captain Calloway watches from near the tool station, his earlier arrogance replaced by confusion and growing embarrassment. The woman he's been ordering around, dismissing, and criticizing for months is suddenly the center of attention for officers who significantly outrank him. His confident understanding of the base hierarchy is crumbling in real time. Colonel Mercer's aide returns, slightly out of breath from running across the base, and whispers something urgent in his commander's ear. Mercer's expression shifts from skepticism to genuine shock, his composed military bearing cracking, just enough to reveal the magnitude of what he's just learned. He straightens his uniform and approaches Rachel directly, stopping at a respectful distance. The hangar falls completely silent. Even the distant sound of aircraft on the tarmac seems muted, as if the world itself is holding its breath for what comes next. "Lieutenant Colonel Thorne," Mercer says formally, his voice carrying clearly in the sudden quiet. "The Pentagon confirmed your identity 20 minutes ago." The words hit the assembled personnel like a physical blow. Younger mechanics gasp audibly. The airmen who mocked her earlier look stunned, their casual cruelty transformed into horrified embarrassment. Captain Calloway, watching from across the hangar, goes visibly pale. "Eagle Talon Division," Mercer continues, his voice taking on the tone reserved for reading commendations. "Operation Midnight Protocol. 7 confirmed deep shadow missions across 3 continents. 3 Congressional Medals of Honor, all classified under presidential directive." With each phrase, the atmosphere in the hangar grows heavier. Some of the older veterans exchange knowing glances, finally understanding why they felt compelled to straighten up in her presence. One master sergeant near the back unconsciously raises his hand in a salute before catching himself. "You were reported killed in action 5 years ago, ma'am," Mercer continues. "The only survivor of the Samarind incident. Why are you here?" Rachel speaks for the first time in front of the assembled personnel. Her voice is steady but rough from months of deliberate underuse, carrying an authority that makes the hangar feel smaller. Because dead women don't get asked questions, Colonel. And I needed the quiet to figure out who betrayed my team. A murmur runs through the crowd like electricity through water. The implications of her words are staggering. A decorated special operations officer, officially dead, hiding in plain sight to investigate betrayal at the highest levels of military intelligence. Your team was ambushed during an extraction, Mercer says, his voice careful. Intelligence indicated a security breach from within Talon itself. Not from within Talon, Rachel corrects him, her gaze steady and unwavering. From within this base. The murmur becomes a barely controlled wave of shock and confusion. Captain Calloway looks like he might be sick, finally understanding the magnitude of how catastrophically he's misjudged the woman he's been treating like expendable personnel. Vanguard wasn't operational 5 years ago, Mercer says, confusion crossing his weathered features. No, Rachel agrees, stepping closer to the Apache's navigation system. But 60% of your staff transferred here from Joint Base Archer, which was. She looks at the assembled officers. May I, Colonel? After a moment's hesitation, Mercer nods. Rachel activates the navigation system and enters a series of commands that shouldn't be accessible to a maintenance technician. The screen illuminates with a detailed map showing troop movements and communication patterns that most of the watching personnel have never seen before. For the past 7 months, I've been tracking encrypted communications moving through Vanguard systems. She explains, her finger tracing patterns on the display. Someone here has been passing classified flight patterns and operational details to a private military corporation called Obsidian Hand. Major Blackwood steps forward, his expression grave. Obsidian Hand provides security for half our diplomatic missions overseas. They also sell advanced weapons technology to hostile nations, Rachel replies without hesitation. My team discovered their operation during what was supposed to be a routine surveillance mission in Samrand. When we had enough evidence to bring them down, they eliminated us. At least, they thought they did. The hangar erupts in controlled chaos. Senior officers gather around Rachel as she begins explaining the data on the screen, pointing out communication patterns that coincide with compromised missions and security breaches that have cost lives across 3 theaters of Operation. Captain Calloway remains frozen near the tool station, watching the woman he treated as invisible command the attention of colonels and intelligence officers. The young mechanics who called her General Dustmop stand at rigid attention whenever she glances in their direction, finally understanding the magnitude of their casual disrespect. The breaking point has been reached. The careful disguise is crumbling away, revealing not just a decorated soldier, but a woman on a mission that's been years in the making. And everyone in that hangar is beginning to understand that they've been witnesses to something extraordinary. Ghost returning to life with secrets that could shake the entire military establishment. The invisible woman is invisible no more, and the real battle is just beginning. How did you survive Samrand? One of the intelligence officers asks, his voice cutting through the controlled chaos surrounding the Apache's display screen. Rachel's expression darkens, and for a moment, the professional composure cracks enough to reveal the weight of memory she's been carrying. I was separated from my team during the initial attack. By the time I fought my way back to the extraction point, they were already gone. She pauses, and everyone in the hangar feels the gravity of what she's not saying. I found their bodies 3 days later. The silence that follows is profound. Even the background noise of the base seems to fade as the full scope of her loss becomes clear to everyone present. I spent 2 years gathering intelligence on Obsidian while officially dead. She continues, her voice steady despite the pain. evident in her eyes. When I finally traced their operation back to personnel who had served at Joint Base Archer, I requested transfer here as a technician. Low profile, access to communication systems, and plenty of time to monitor suspicious activity. Colonel Mercer leans forward, studying the data patterns on the Apache's screen. And this aircraft? Why modify this specific helicopter? Because this isn't just any Apache, Rachel explains, her fingers dancing across the control interface. With practiced expertise, this particular aircraft was recently fitted with the prototype Hawkeye targeting system, a system that Obsidian helped develop through their government contracts. I've been modifying it to intercept and decrypt their secure communications. The revelation sends another wave of shock through the assembled officers. Major Blackwood stares at the woman he's been flying missions with, finally understanding that his maintenance technician has been conducting the most sophisticated intelligence operation in the base's history right under everyone's noses. Rachel removes the patch from her sleeve, studying the black and gold insignia for a moment before handing it to Blackwood. This shouldn't have been seen, but since it has, she looks around at the faces surrounding her. The mission isn't over. They're coming, and you need to prepare. Who's coming? Mercer asks, though his expression suggests he already knows. The answer: the same people who killed my team, Rachel replies. They've been looking for me for 5 years, and now they know exactly where I am. As if summoned by her words, the distant sound of an explosion rolls across the base. Alarms begin wailing immediately, their piercing sound transforming the hangar from a place of revelation into a scene of urgent preparation. That's the north perimeter, Mercer says, already moving toward the communication station mounted on the hangar wall. All personnel to battle stations. This is not a drill. The base transforms from routine operation to high alert in seconds. Officers shout orders while personnel run to predetermined defensive positions. Through it all, Rachel stands calmly by the Apache, watching the organized chaos with the detached observation of someone who has seen far worse. Major Blackwood returns to her side, now looking at her with the respect she's always deserved. They hit us at shift change. Maximum confusion, minimum effective resistance. Standard Obsidian tactics, Rachel confirms. They'll have a primary strike team targeting this hangar specifically. This Apache contains the only proof of their entire network. How many should we expect? Blackwood asks, checking his sidearm. At least 20 operators. Former Special Forces, well-equipped, highly trained. Rachel reaches into her toolkit and removes what appears to be a false bottom, revealing a compact pistol and combat knife that definitely weren't issued by base supply. They don't leave loose ends. Blackwood glances at the weapons, then back in her face. No offense, ma'am, but one Talon operative and a hangar full of support personnel aren't going to hold off 20 elite mercenaries. For the first time since the crisis began, Rachel allows herself a small, dangerous smile. You're right, Major. That's why we're not going to be here when they arrive. The transformation is accelerating now. Captain Calloway approaches hesitantly, his earlier arrogance completely gone. Ma'am, what do you need from us? Rachel studies him for a moment, seeing not the petty officer who dismissed her, but a potential asset in the battle to come. Your maintenance crews trust you, Captain. I need them at their best. Every aircraft we can get airborne gives us a tactical advantage. Calloway nods, purpose replacing shame in his expression. You'll have them, ma'am. Save the apologies for later, Rachel says as he turns to go. Right now, we have work to do. As Calloway hurries away with new determination, Rachel begins, issuing orders with the natural authority of someone born to command. The invisible woman has shed her disguise completely, revealing the combat leader she's always been underneath. More explosions echo across the base, closer now. Through the hangar's high windows, Smoke can be seen rising from several buildings. The attack is systematic, professional, and exactly what Rachel has been preparing for during 7 months of careful observation. She moves to the Apache's weapon systems, conducting final checks with movements that are suddenly crisp and military precise. "Major, how's your combat flying?" "Rusty but functional," Blackwood admits. "Where are we going?" "Straight to Central Command." This data goes directly to the Pentagon. No intermediaries. No chance for Obsidian to intercept or corrupt the intelligence. "Colonel," Mercer approaches with a grim expression. "Satellite shows multiple assault teams converging on our position. Estimated time of arrival, 15 minutes. Then we leave in 10, Rachel says simply. The ghost has returned to the world of the living. And she's brought a storm with her. The woman everyone ignored now stands at the center of a battle that will determine whether years of betrayal and murder will finally be brought to justice. The hunt that began 5 years ago in the deserts of Samarand is about to reach its conclusion in the hangars of Forward Operating Base Vanguard. And this time, Rachel Thorne intends to finish what her team started. The hangar transforms into a hive of desperate activity as personnel prepare for the incoming assault. Rachel moves between weapon systems and communication, arrays with the fluid efficiency of someone who has planned for this moment through 7 months of careful preparation. Dose protocol is now in effect, she announces to the assembled officers, using terminology that makes the intelligence personnel straighten with recognition. All non-essential personnel evacuate to hardened positions. Essential personnel prepare for immediate departure. Captain Calloway coordinates his maintenance crews with newfound urgency, ensuring that 2 additional Apaches can be made flight-ready as decoys. The young mechanics who once mocked Rachel now follow her orders with the precision of elite units, finally understanding that their lives depend on her expertise. "Ma'am," one of the intelligence officers approaches with a tablet displaying satellite imagery. "We've identified at least 50 hostile combatants approaching from multiple vectors. They're using military-grade equipment and coordinated assault tactics." Rachel studies the display with clinical detachment. Obsidian doesn't do anything. Small scale. They want to ensure there are no survivors this time. She looks up at the officer. "Have you confirmed the identity of their field commander?" "Working on it now, but the electronic signature matches patterns from the Samarand incident." For the first time since the crisis began, Rachel's composure shows a crack. Her jaw tightens almost imperceptibly. "Marcus Kane, I should have known he'd want to finish this personally." Major Blackwood pauses in his pre-flight checks. "You know, their commander?" "He used to be one of us," Rachel replies, her voice carrying years of betrayal and anger. "Talon operative turned mercenary. He's the one who sold out our extraction coordinates in Samarand." The revelation adds another layer of complexity to an already desperate situation. This isn't just about corporate espionage or classified technology. It's personal, a settling of accounts that began with the murder of Rachel's entire team. "Contact!" a Marine guard shouts from the hangar entrance. Multiple vehicles approaching the outer perimeter. Through the massive hangar doors, everyone can see the distinctive profiles of armored vehicles moving across the desert landscape. With military precision, the professional nature of the assault is immediately apparent. This isn't a raid. It's an operation planned and executed by people who understand modern warfare. "Time to go," Rachel announces, moving toward the Apache with fluid grace. She's no longer hiding her combat training. Every movement reveals years of elite military conditioning that civilian disguise couldn't completely suppress. Colonel Mercer approaches with a secured communication device. "The Pentagon is standing by for immediate data transmission once you're airborne." "Understood," Rachel replies, accepting the device. "But Colonel, you need to understand something. Obsidian has infiltrators throughout the military intelligence community. We can't trust normal channels. Then how do we ensure the intelligence gets through? Rachel's smile is sharp and dangerous. We deliver it in person. The Apache's engines roar to life, their distinctive sound cutting through the base alarms and distant explosions. Major Blackwood runs through final system checks while Rachel activates the modified targeting system that contains months of intercepted communications and documented evidence. Ghost 1 to Tower. Blackwood radios. Requesting immediate takeoff. Clearance. Ghost 1, you are cleared for immediate takeoff. Godspeed. As the Apache lifts off from the hangar floor, the full scope of the attack becomes visible. Enemy forces have breached the outer perimeter at multiple points, engaging base defenders in firefights that light up the desert twilight. From altitude, Rachel can count at least 60 combatants, far more than her initial estimate. They really want you dead, Blackwood comments as he maneuvers the helicopter away from the base. They want what's in this targeting system, Rachel corrects him. My death is just a professional necessity. Warning indicators flash across the console as missile lock alarms begin screaming. Surface-to-air missile, Blackwood announces, deploying countermeasures as he banks the Apache sharply to the right. Flares stream from the helicopter's defensive systems, and the incoming missile veers off course, exploding harmlessly in the distance. But the radar screen shows more contacts approaching from the east, 2 helicopters bearing no identification markings. Obsidian air support, Rachel observes with grim satisfaction. Canes covering all the angles. The lead enemy helicopter opens fire with automatic weapons, forcing Blackwood into evasive maneuvers that test the Apache's engineering limits. Rachel activates the weapon systems with movements that are automatic after years of combat experience. Acquiring target lock, she announces with professional calm. The Apache shudders as missiles launch from its hardpoints, streaking toward the enemy helicopter with deadly precision. The pilot attempts evasive action, but Rachel's modifications to the targeting system make escape impossible. The explosion lights up the desert sky like a brief, violent sunrise. 1 down, Blackwood reports. But the second is maintaining distance, probably calling for reinforcements. Then, we better hurry, Rachel replies, setting course for Central Command headquarters. This intelligence has to reach the Pentagon before Kane can activate his network. OF contacts to suppress it. As they fly toward their destination, Rachel reflects on the long journey that brought her to this moment. 7 months of invisibility, of being treated like furniture while she gathered the evidence needed to expose years of betrayal and murder. The woman everyone ignored is now racing against time to prevent further atrocities. The ghost has returned. Not for revenge, but for justice. And nothing not Kane's mercenaries, not Obsidian's resources, not years of careful cover-up will stop her from completing the mission her team died trying to finish. Central Command rises from the desert, like a fortress of glass and steel, its communication arrays and defensive systems bristling against the darkening sky. As the Apache approaches, Rachel activates the secured transmission protocols that will bypass normal intelligence channels and deliver her evidence directly to the Pentagon's highest levels. Ghost 1 to Central Command, requesting priority. Landing clearance, Major Blackwood radios. We have classified intelligence for immediate Pentagon relay. Ghost 1, you are cleared for landing pad Alpha. Security teams are being notified. As they descend toward the landing pad, Rachel notices unmarked vehicles positioned around the command center's perimeter. Her trained eye immediately identifies the tactical positioning. This isn't security, it's preparation for an assault. We've got a problem, she tells Blackwood. Kane's people are already here. The Apache touches down as armed figures emerge from the shadows around the landing pad. But these aren't Obsidian mercenaries. They're military police, weapons raised and trained on the helicopter. shut down engines, and exit the aircraft. Comes the amplified command through a megaphone. Rachel and Blackwood exchange glances. Something is wrong, very wrong. This is Lieutenant Colonel Rachel Thorne, Special Operations. Rachel calls out as she exits the Apache with her hands visible. I have critical intelligence for immediate Pentagon transmission. A colonel she doesn't recognize approaches with obvious authority. Colonel Thorne, you're under arrest for desertion, falsifying death records, and violation of the Official Secrets Act. The words hit like physical blows. Rachel's mind races through the implications. Kane's network reaches higher than she imagined. Obsidian hasn't just infiltrated operational units. They've corrupted the command structure itself. Sir, I have evidence of a massive security breach involving defense contractors and classified technology sales. Rachel protests as military police move to restrain her. Your evidence is irrelevant, the colonel replies coldly. You died 5 years ago, according to official records. Anything you've done since then is illegal. Major Blackwood steps forward. Colonel, I've seen her intelligence. There's documented proof of Major Blackwood. You'll also be held for questioning regarding your involvement with a deserter. As handcuffs are applied, Rachel spots a familiar figure emerging from one of the unmarked vehicles. Marcus Kane, still bearing the posture of special forces, training but wearing civilian clothes that can't hide the weapons beneath his jacket. Their eyes meet across the landing pad. And Kane's smile is everything Rachel expected, cold, professional, and absolutely ruthless. "Oh, Rachel," he says as he approaches. "You've caused us considerable trouble." "Not nearly enough, apparently," she replies, testing the restraints. Kane chuckles. "Always the professional. I admired that about you, even when I was setting up your team for elimination." The admission, spoken casually in front of dozens of witnesses, should be enough to destroy him. But the corrupt colonel simply nods as if treason is routine business. "The Apache contains modified intelligence systems," Kane continues. "I'll need access to remove any sensitive materials." "Of course," the colonel agrees. "Sergeant, escort Mr. Kane to the aircraft." Rachel watches helplessly as Kane approaches. Her carefully modified targeting system, months of gathered evidence, about to be destroyed by the man who murdered her team. But as he begins accessing the helicopter's computers, she allows herself a small smile. Kane has always been arrogant. Always assumed he was the smartest person in any room. It's a weakness she's been counting on. "Problem?" he asks, noticing her expression. "Just thinking about how you always underestimated people," Rachel replies. "Especially women." Kane's fingers pause over the keyboard. Something in her tone has triggered his professional paranoia. "What did you do?" "The intelligence you're looking for isn't in that system," Rachel says calmly. "It's already been transmitted. Impossible. You've been under surveillance since takeoff." Rachel's smile widens. "Remember Captain Calloway? The hangar commander you probably dismissed as irrelevant." She pauses for effect. "He's been uploading everything to Pentagon servers for the past 2 hours using the base's quantum communication array." Kane's face goes pale. "You're lying. The modified Apache was never about storage," Rachel continues, her voice carrying across the landing pad. "It was about real-time transmission. Every communication you've intercepted, every financial transaction, every classified document sale, it's all been streaming directly to Pentagon intelligence since your attack began." The corrupt colonel steps forward, his confidence beginning to crack. "That's impossible. We control all communication protocols." "You control the standard protocols," Rachel agrees. "But you forgot that Talon operatives have access to channels that don't officially exist." Kane's professional composure finally breaks. He draws his weapon, pointing it directly at Rachel's head. "Then you've just signed everyone's death warrant, including your own." "Marcus," Rachel says quietly, using his first name for the first time in 5 years. You taught me that the best operations are the ones where your enemies defeat themselves. Before Kane can respond, his encrypted radio crackles to life. Obsidian command to field teams. Abort mission immediately. Pentagon has issued federal arrest warrants for all Obsidian personnel. Repeat, abort, and evacuate. The landing pad erupts into chaos. The corrupt colonel realizes his position has become untenable as legitimate military police arrive from Central. Command's interior, responding to authenticated Pentagon orders. Kane's mercenaries find themselves surrounded by actual military personnel who aren't on Obsidian's payroll. Major Blackwood, still in handcuffs, watches the scene unfold with growing amazement. How did you know they'd try to intercept us here? Because Kane always takes the path of least resistance, Rachel explains as the corrupt colonel orders her restraints removed with obvious reluctance. He'd rather corrupt existing authority than fight it directly. I've been counting on his predictability for 7 months. Federal agents emerge from helicopters that have been circling just outside radar range, their timing too perfect to be coincidental. Kane realizes he's been outmaneuvered on every level. The woman he thought he'd trapped has instead trapped him. You planned this entire confrontation, he says with grudging respect. I planned for your arrogance, Rachel corrects him. You couldn't resist gloating, couldn't resist trying to destroy the evidence personally. It's the same weakness that got my team killed 5 years ago. As federal agents surround Kane and his remaining operatives, Rachel finally allows herself to feel the weight of vindication. The ghost operation is complete, the evidence secured, and the traitors exposed. Ma'am, one of the Pentagon agents approaches with obvious respect. The Secretary of Defense requests your immediate debriefing in Washington. Rachel nods, then looks back at Kane as he's placed in federal custody. The mission is complete, Marcus. My team can finally rest. The woman everyone ignored has just dismantled one of the most sophisticated intelligence operations in military history. The invisible technician was the most dangerous person on the base, and now everyone knows it. The Pentagon's secure briefing room falls silent as Rachel completes her detailed presentation. 3 hours of documented evidence, intercepted communications, and financial records paint a picture of corruption that reaches into the highest levels of military contracting. Secretary of Defense Patricia Holland studies the final display, screening with the expression of someone witnessing the collapse of everything she thought she could trust. Lieutenant Colonel Thorne, Secretary Holland begins formally. Your evidence documents the systematic compromise of classified military technology, the murder of special operations personnel, and treason involving dozens of military and civilian officials. Yes, ma'am, Rachel replies, standing at attention for the first time in 7 months. The scope of this infiltration is staggering. Obsidian Hand has been operating within our defense infrastructure for nearly a decade. Holland pauses, studying Rachel with obvious respect. Your investigation has prevented the sale of next-generation weapons systems to 3 hostile nations. Around the table, generals and intelligence officials exchange glances that communicate the magnitude of what's been uncovered. The woman who spent months being treated as invisible furniture has just handed them the most significant counterintelligence victory in recent military history. What about the personnel at Forward Operating Base Vanguard? Rachel asks. Captain Calloway and his team performed exceptionally under pressure. Captain Calloway has been recommended for promotion and commendation, Holland confirms. His real-time intelligence transmission was crucial to our ability to coordinate federal response. Rachel allows herself a small smile, thinking of the young officer who evolved from petty arrogance to professional competence when the stakes became clear. Sometimes people rise to meet the moment when given the chance. Major Blackwood will also receive recognition for his role in the operation, Holland continues. Though I suspect he's still processing the fact that his maintenance technician was actually running the most classified investigation in his base's history. The Major adapted quickly to changing circumstances, Rachel observes diplomatically. 3 days later, Rachel stands in the hangar at Forward Operating Base Vanguard, back in her technical specialist uniform, but no longer hiding her true identity. The Eagle Talon patch is visible on her shoulder, and personnel throughout the base now understand exactly who has been working among them. Captain Andrew Calloway approaches with obvious nervousness, carrying a clipboard but holding it more like a shield than a tool. His entire worldview has been restructured by recent events, and he's still adjusting to the reality that the woman he dismissed for months significantly outranks him. "Ma'am," he begins formally, "I wanted to apologize for my behavior over the past 7 months. I had no idea." "Captain," Rachel interrupts gently, "you weren't supposed to know. That was the entire point of the operation. Still, I treated you with disrespect. That's inexcusable, regardless of circumstances." Rachel studies the young officer, seeing genuine remorse and personal growth. "You performed admirably when it mattered most. That's what I'll remember." Calloway straightens, some of his natural confidence returning. "Will you be staying at Vanguard?" "For a while. There are still loose ends to address, and the Apache program needs oversight to ensure no other systems have been compromised." As Calloway leaves, Major Blackwood approaches with 2 cups of coffee and an expression of continued amazement. "I've been thinking about something," he says, offering her one of the cups. "What's that, Major?" 7 months. You maintained that cover for 7 months, letting people treat you like you were nobody special." He shakes his head. "I don't think I could have done it." Rachel sips her coffee, considering the question. Sometimes the most important missions require the greatest sacrifices of ego. My team died because someone with access to classified information sold us out for money. Finding that person was worth any amount of personal discomfort. And Marcus Kane, federal custody, facing charges of treason, murder, and conspiracy. His network is being systematically dismantled. Rachel's expression grows serious. My team can finally have justice. That evening, Rachel walks alone through the hangar where she spent so many months being invisible. The Apache sits in its usual position, but now it's surrounded by obvious security measures and restricted access warnings. The weapon system that helped expose a massive conspiracy has become a valuable piece of evidence in ongoing federal prosecutions. She thinks about the young mechanics who called her General Dust. Mop, now standing at respectful attention whenever she passes. About the mess hall where she sat alone, now receiving invitations to join conversations she politely declines. About the supply depot where she was routinely ignored, now receiving immediate attention and assistance. The transformation is complete. But it feels strange after so many months of deliberate invisibility. Being seen, being acknowledged, being treated with the respect her rank and service record deserve. It's simultaneously validating and isolating. Her phone buzzes with a secure message from Pentagon intelligence. 3 more Obsidian operatives have been arrested based on intelligence from her investigation. The network continues to unravel, revealing corruption that reaches into congressional offices and defense contractor boardrooms. Rachel deletes the message and continues her walk. Tomorrow there will be more briefings, more questions, more loose ends to address. But tonight, for the first time in 5 years, she can walk without looking over her shoulder, without wondering who might be planning her elimination. The ghost has completed her mission and returned to the world of the living. The invisible woman has been seen, acknowledged, and vindicated. Justice has been served not through revenge, but through patience, intelligence, and the careful application of skills learned in the shadows of special operations. And sometimes, that's the most satisfying victory of all. 6 months later, Rachel stands before a joint session of the Senate Intelligence Committee, delivering her final testimony in the Obsidian Hand investigation. The hearing room is packed with media, military officials, and family members of the operatives who died in Samarand 5 years ago. Senator Williams, she says, in response to a question about operational security, the success of this investigation depended entirely on the willingness of regular military personnel to rise above their normal expectations and perform exceptionally when called upon. She thinks of Captain Calloway, now Major Calloway, commanding his own base in Germany with a reputation for developing overlooked talent. Of the young mechanics who learned that competence and respect matter more than rank or appearance. Of Major Blackwood, who never again assumed he knew everything about the people around him. The real heroes of this operation, Rachel continues, were the men and women who chose to do the right thing when doing the wrong thing would have been easier and safer. After the hearing, Rachel walks through Arlington National Cemetery toward a section she hasn't visited since her return from the dead. 5 headstones mark the graves of her team members, their names etched in marble alongside the dates of their deaths in Samarand. She places a small black and gold eagle talon patch on each grave, finally able to honor their memory without compromising. Ongoing operations. Mission complete, she says quietly to the silent stones. Justice served. A year later, Rachel receives her new assignment, commanding a joint task force investigating international defense contractor security. The position requires her to work directly with the Pentagon, Congress, and allied nations to prevent another Obsidian-style infiltration. It's high-profile work, the opposite of invisible. But sometimes the most effective operations happen in the light rather than the shadows. On her final day at Forward Operating Base Vanguard, Rachel makes one last walk through the hangar where her mission began. The Apache she modified has been retired to a classified storage facility. Its intelligence-gathering modifications, now part of official military technology development. A new group of mechanics works on the replacement aircraft, their voices echoing off the hangar walls with the easy camaraderie of people who respect each other's contributions. One of them, a young woman named Jennifer, waves as Rachel passes. "Ma'am," Jennifer calls out, "heard you're heading to Washington." "That's right," Rachel confirms. "Think you'll miss being invisible?" Jennifer asks with a grin that suggests she understands more about Rachel's experience than most people ever will. Rachel considers the question seriously. Sometimes the most important work happens when nobody's watching. But sometimes it's equally important to be seen. She looks around the hangar one final time, remembering the months when these walls witnessed her careful transformation from invisible technician to acknowledged leader. The ghost who haunted this place has finally found peace, not through revenge, but through the patient pursuit of justice. As she walks toward the exit, Rachel reflects on the lessons learned during 7 months of deliberate invisibility, about the danger of assumptions, the value of overlooked people, and the power that comes from choosing when to be seen and when to disappear. The woman everyone ignored changed everything by refusing to accept that being invisible meant being powerless. She proved that sometimes the quietest people carry the heaviest burdens, and that patient intelligence can triumph over arrogant force. Her story spreads through military communities as a reminder that heroism comes in many forms. Sometimes it's dramatic and obvious, performed in front of cameras and crowds. But sometimes it's quiet and persistent, carried out by people who choose to serve without recognition, to sacrifice without acknowledgement, to fight for justice even when justice seems impossible. Rachel Thorne, Lieutenant Colonel, Eagle Talon Division, survivor of Samarand, defender of the truth, has completed her journey from death to invisibility to vindication. The ghost has found rest. The invisible woman has been seen. And the mission that began 5 years ago with betrayal and murder has ended with justice and honor. In a world where the loudest voices often carry the least truth, she proved that sometimes the most powerful people are those who choose to remain silent until the moment when silence is no longer an option. Her legacy lives on in every person who refuses to accept that being overlooked means being powerless. In every individual who chooses patience over impulse, intelligence over force, justice over revenge. The story ends where it began, in a hangar where aircraft wait for missions, where dedicated people perform essential work, where heroes hide in plain sight until the moment when hiding is no longer possible. Some stories end with explosions and dramatic confrontations. This one ends with quiet satisfaction, professional competence, and the understanding that the most effective victories are often the ones that look like ordinary work performed by extraordinary people. The invisible woman has become visible again, not through force or demand, but through the simple act of completing a mission that mattered more than personal recognition. And sometimes, that's the most powerful ending of all. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and become a part of our Everyday Life Stories community. Where are you watching from? Drop a comment below. We love hearing from our amazing viewers around the world.